Back now, then 1 in 8 men will get prostate cancer in their lifetime. I think, Nick, you were just saying it's 1 in 4 black men.
Black men, yes.
1 in 4 black men will get it in their lifetime, with 12,000 losing their lives to the disease every year.
It's now officially overtaken breast cancer as the most common form of cancer. However, when detected early, the prognosis for someone with prostate cancer is usually positive.
As campaigners head to Parliament today to call for the introduction of a national screening programme, we're joined by Dr Zoe, alongside business mogul Nick Jones, who credits the early detection of his own prostate cancer with saving his life. Lovely to see you both this morning. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
So, Nick, take us back to your experience with this.
Well, both my parents died of cancer. My dad didn't die of prostate cancer, but they both died of cancer. So I was very aware to keep an eye on my blood. So I was a self-screener. Every 6 months I'd used to go and have blood tests. And during this, one moment my PSA was at a raised level, and the next time it was it was variable. So my doctor suggested I went and had an MRI. And I went and had an MRI. Out comes the MRI, it's a big tumour in my prostate. And I just want to start, because I didn't know where my prostate was. So my prostate is the size of a walnut, and it sits about here in your body, and it has 4 things which go through it. It has your semen tube, your urine tube, and 2 nerves which give you an erection.
Right.
And I then, after the MRI, it was a very, very clear sign that I had prostate cancer. I then had a biopsy, and the biopsy came back as cancerous. And then there's a sort of list of things that you can have done. You can have radiation, there's focal treatment, there's all sorts of treatments. But mine was on the verge of coming out my prostate. So it was advised by a lot of people to have my prostate taken out.
But you didn't feel anything? You didn't have any symptoms or anything?
No symptoms whatsoever. So when I sort of recovered, it's a pretty simple operation now, robotic. When I recovered, I thought, this is so unfair. I was lucky, because I wasn't lucky that my parents died of cancer, but I was in...
You always did a screening process.
But I was lucky that I was a private doctor. I went to have my MRI done privately. And I just think so many people aren't as lucky as me. And I just wanted to try and pass the luck I had on to everyone else. And that is why I am calling for a national screening for prostate.
So, Zoe, it's earlier this year, prostate cancer overtook breast cancer as the most common form of cancer. It seems, when you hear the statistics like that and you hear Nick's story, it seems reasonable that there should be a screening.
There should be a screening programme. The issue is we don't have a good enough test. So PSA, which is a blood test, people think it's just a simple blood test. Why don't we just give every man over 50 or over 45 with a high risk
what is
blood
PSA?
test?
What does it stand for?
So it stands for prostate-specific antigen, and it's a protein that's in the blood. And if it's above a certain level, then it indicates a number of things could be happening with the prostate. The prostate could be inflamed. It's high if you've exercised vigorously the past 48 hours, if you've ejaculated in the past 48 hours, if you've got an enlarged prostate that's benign, but it can also be a sign of prostate cancer. Now, if you were to screen all the men and all those who had a raised PSA, only 1 in 4 of them would actually have prostate cancer. 3/4 of them would not. So the issue is, so if a man comes to their GP and asks for a PSA test to be done, we have a responsibility to counsel them and just sort of think, well, what's the next step and the next step and the next step? And then go back and make your decision. Because what tends to happen now is, in most places in the NHS, they would get an MRI, which would give further information, but it still misses a lot of cancers and still misdiagnoses. The next step is a biopsy. So the biopsy is quite an invasive test. So it's an ultrasound probe that goes into the rectum, and then 10 or 12 needles go into the prostate gland to take sections of it. Now, if we're thinking that that potentially causes harm to all the people who turn out to not have prostate cancer, the decision that the UK screening guidelines need to come up with is what level of harm to people who don't have prostate cancer is OK to help diagnose those prostate cancers that need to be diagnosed early to give the best chance of survival and treatment. And that's why the PSA on its own at the moment isn't a good enough test. There are lots of new tests being developed, and there's a massive trial going on at the moment, which is starting this year, which has had massive funding. It's had 42 million funding, looking at all the various tests that can diagnose prostate cancer. So if you have a PSA plus an MRI plus a genetic scan plus biomarkers, At what point can we have a test that's good enough that we're not causing unnecessary harm? So that's the reason that we don't have a nationwide screening test for prostate cancer, because we don't have a good enough test. But there is this argument for, well, what about people who are high risk? So we've already said that black men, 1 in 4 will get prostate cancer, 1 in 12 will die from prostate cancer. Men who have a family history of prostate cancer, because they're already starting out with a higher risk, the risk-benefit equation is different. And for those men, we need to figure out, is it worth, is it a good idea to screen those men with a PSA to increase their chances? But for the time being, we haven't got a good enough test to screen everybody. But I know what's being debated at the moment is, do we have good enough tests? Do we have good enough resources to screen those who are already at higher risk?
Well, Dr Zoe, I don't agree with everything you're saying. I think the PSA, even though it's not 100% accurate, it's what's available now. And there are 12,000 men dying unnecessarily every year with prostate cancer. It's what saved me. If I didn't have a prostate PSA, which was slightly raised, I wouldn't have gone into the MRI. I think if you look at the figures, last year, and these were announced yesterday, only 7% of men were overtreated last year on prostate cancer, which is a very small percentage of the men who are actually being saved by having their PSA done, because the PSA is an indicator. Then you go to the MRI, as you discussed. It isn't a rectal biopsy, it's more advanced now, so it's not very invasive. The actual, by the time the results come through, as I explained a bit, is that there's lots of options. It's not immediately go and have an operation. There's all sorts of other treatments you can have. So I am calling for a screening program for prostate cancer, because yes, and will the test get better? There's many under trial at the moment. Will the MRI get better? Yes, they're getting shorter time. Will the operation get better? Yes. Will the drugs get better? Everything will get better. Do we have to wait for perfection before it all comes in? Or are we going to continue letting 12,000 men die?
Also, just to share, that's not my opinion. I don't disagree with you, but these are the reasons that the UK National Screening Committee gave in 2020, and it's all being reviewed at the moment, and we expect to hear later this year if there will be new guidelines around screening introduced based on those equations.
It's really hard when you're sitting there as well, Nick, and you had this test and it's actually saved your life.
Well, it did. And I think everyone should have that right. And what Zoe says is right. To put in a full screening programme exactly for every man, which is my wish, I don't think that's going to be achieved this time round. But certainly they should put a screening programme in for black men and men at high risk, without a doubt. And that would save at least half of those lives.
But regardless as well, if you have a partner at home or you are watching this show and you are of age, what's the ideal age, Zoe, to go for a PSA test?
So if people want to explore it, if you're above the age of 50, if you're normal risk, if you're high risk, then above the age of 45. But there's a risk checker on the Prostate Cancer UK website that's really helped. It takes 30 seconds to establish what your own risk is, and go in and have a chat with your GP about your risk and what's the best
But it is a really simple test.
And you have to be pretty insistent to your GP, because a lot of times people are turned away saying they don't need a PSA, you have no symptoms. You don't have any symptoms for prostate cancer until it's too late. And when it's too late is when the actual cancer has come out of the prostate and gone into your bones or other organs. And that is what we're trying to prevent.
Can I add one last thing? One of the things that puts off a lot of people from going and seeing their GP about this is they think they're going to have a rectal examination. And if people want to have a PSA test, you don't have to. You can refuse a rectal examination and just have a PSA test. So don't let that put fear into it.
Well, if you would like more information about prostate cancer, there are helplines on our website. So
Good luck this afternoon.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
We'll be watching to see what happens. It's great to have you here and looking so well.
Oh,
hello. Thank you for visiting our This Morning YouTube channel. We upload tons of new content every single day. So hit the subscribe button, like all the videos, and don't miss out. We'll see you in the morning.